As most of you have probably seen her on Fox News, on Hannity's show as a regular. She's on CNBC. She's on a lot of different TV stations as an expert on a lot of different issues. And she's also vice president of the Young America's Foundation. It's an organization that helps to train the young people in the country. And that's really where we need to start with our change. How do we get the young people involved and educated as to what is going on in our country and how it's going to affect them? She also gained national attention as the chairman of the Virginia GOP from 2003 to 2006. And she also served as Senator George Allen's chief of staff. We saw him last year, and as chief education health policy advisor while he was governor of Virginia. So with that, here she is, Kate Obenshain.
Thank you. Oh, it is so nice to be here. What a dynamic, incredible group. I have to tell you, when I come to California, I get really nervous, and I think I'm coming into totally enemy territory. But look at this. I'm among friends. And because of you all and the incredible work that you've done, and groups like yours all across the country, I am so happy that in the last AP poll that was taken last week, his support among women has gone down by an astounding 12 percentage points. That is incredible, and you all should stand very tall and be very proud. Well, I particularly want to thank Chris and Kathy Taylor for having me here, for urging me to come, and for supporting Young America's Foundation. We just couldn't do what we do without wonderful Americans like you. Vicki, thank you so much for your hard work as leading this great group, and Becky for her great leadership and really building this organization. It is absolutely incredible. JT, I just went up and introduced myself because she really is the one that needs to be on Fox News. She's incredible, so dynamic. It's great to see Diane Eulinger, yet another supporter of Young America's Foundation. She came up to the ranch with the Taylors a couple years ago. That was so great. And Christy Ward is doing great work at Chapman, one of the few colleges and universities I would say you should allow your children to go to. And Dr. and Mrs. Cram. What a lovely, lovely pleasure to see both of you. I turned around and there were your bright, shining faces. And the Crams have sent their grandchildren, more than one or just Emily? Nope. More than one, that's right.
Yes,
more than one. They're going to send them all to Young America's Foundation's conferences at the Reagan Ranch, and they can tell you specific stories if you'd like, if you're nervous about sending your young ones away, because I hope by the end of this you will believe that you need to send every single young person you know in your entire life to the Reagan Ranch, to Young America's Foundation's conferences. You know, I met Kathy and I met Diane and Chris through George Allen, and I know he's been here. Back in 1993, when he was running for governor in Virginia, he was an unknown, basically. And I had just graduated from college, and I was working for Young America's Foundation back then when I first graduated, and somebody said, "Oh, come to this speech tonight by this guy who's running for something." That is the last thing I want to do. Well, they dragged me out to this speech. It was pouring down rain. And I went, and this tall man wearing cowboy boots was standing there really thundering about how government should not take from the mouths of labor the bread that it has earned. And again, he was talking about the founding fathers, and I was on the edge of my seat, and finally somebody who's talking about what's going on in the public arena. This was back in 93, but even then we saw this steady encroachment of government on our personal liberties, and finally somebody who was willing to stand up and just say it like it is. And as a result of that, I jumped into politics. I went to work for his campaign and worked for him when he was governor. But that is the sort of leader that we need talking to our young people right now. Because let me tell you, the left gets it. Barack Obama has been on campuses or high schools since the day he was inaugurated, once every 12 days. Actually, I think it's about down to 10. I've forgotten I forget to add over the past couple of months. Once every 10 to 12 days. That is a stunning number for the most powerful leader in the free world to have the time to go to our high schools and colleges once every 10 to 12 days, but they know exactly what they're doing. They understand that the future of freedom, the future of our nation, the direction that our nation decides to take will be determined by those young people. And let me tell you, it's working. We saw it in the last election, of course, where young people are responsible for our president in the Oval Office. We can thank them for that, but we can also thank the fact that we didn't do our job, that we didn't counter that message with a positive, optimistic vision for freedom, a conservative vision, which always wins when we get it out there, when we get the facts out there. But because we left this sort of vacuum, I mean, honestly, our candidate said he didn't know how to use email, and he never went on. Do you remember that? He said something like he likes to surf the webs. You know, he had no idea, and we didn't help him. He just was out there floundering, and you've got this cool Barack Obama talking about hope and change. You know, and young people were just flocking to him. There was a poll that was taken about a year and a half, 2 years ago, that should send chills down our spines. And that is that equal numbers of young people prefer socialism to capitalism. I'm not kidding you. I don't make these things up. You couldn't make these things up. It is a very scary number. And what they're doing is they're going directly to our young people, taking the message to our young people. Obama gets it. Now, my topic today officially is the devastating impact of Obama's policies on young people. You all really already know it because they're the devastating policies impacting all of us. But young people, that group, that key group that came out in numbers we had never anticipated, I was shocked by the level of motivation by young people. I was thinking, no way, they never vote. They never vote. You know, they're excited about this guy, but they're still not going to vote. They voted big time. So they basically got this guy elected, and his policies are targeting them. They are devastating young people, their hope, their future. It is taking a direct impact. Our unemployment rate for the population in general, between 8 and 9%, keeps fluctuating a little bit. For young people, and you all know that's not the real unemployment number because it doesn't count people who've been unemployed for over 6 months. So the unemployment numbers for young people, 19%. And that's not accurate. Of course, it's much higher than that. The highest level of student debt that students have ever experienced in this country, I think that they graduate with an average of $23,000 worth of debt, which is staggering. It's an absolutely staggering number. Obviously, the health care takeover by the federal government. And that, by the way, think about how you articulate things. Make sure we use our language and not the less language. It is a government takeover of 1/6 of the economy. And who does that impact? By forcing these healthy young people to pay astronomical premiums, it's devastating them and their future. Obviously, the national debt. It's going to impact young people. And before he was elected, Barack Obama said that Bush's debt was unpatriotic. And I really agree with him. I think escalating the debt is unpatriotic because it robs us of the American dream. So in the past 3 years, Obama has driven the national debt up as much as Bush did in 8 years. 3 years to 8 years. It's now over $15 trillion. It's a stunning number. It's more than our GDP. There's no way you pay that back. And young people realize that. They realize that they are the ones, not only are they not going to be able to pay it back, but they're going to pay the price by less prosperity. This is the first generation that is facing a less prosperous future in America than their parents. Is that a stunning, stunning thing? So obviously, increasing taxes and regulations is stifling any hope of entrepreneurship for these young, vibrant minds. The Huffington Post reported, okay, this is a liberal bastion, this is not National Review, reported that 2011 college graduates, all of the college graduates, 85%, I have trouble even believing this number, but the Huffington Post, 85% of college graduates had to return home because they couldn't find work. They had to return home to live in their parents' basements because they couldn't find work. 85%. Even if that number is close to being accurate, It is a very, some of you are nodding your heads because your kids are at home in your basements, I know. Obviously, Social Security, which everybody's eyes immediately glaze over when we start talking about Social Security, but they can't glaze over because the Democrats, the left, will not deal with Social Security. Okay, just really quickly, it was created in 1950, and there were over 16 people were paying into Social Security for every one retiree. In 2030, it will be 2 people paying in for every one retiree. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's going to be bankrupt, and these young people are just pouring money down the tubes. They'll never get any of it back. Never. Whereas they could be saving for their own retirement. They could be putting money into their own health savings accounts. And yet we're not letting them. We're just taking over. Food stamps, obviously. Food stamps are through the roof. We think, oh, young people don't have to worry about that. It's a culture. It's a culture of dependency that is robbing these young people of this future of hope. So all these numbers, unemployment, debt, they're devastating. We've come up with something at Young America's Foundation called the Youth Misery Index, where we add together unemployment, national debt, and student debt. And of course, it's at an all-time high. That's really resonating. Youth Misery Index, because nobody wants to be miserable. But they are right now. I think that, and you're not hearing this massive transformation among young people, because nobody likes to be wrong, particularly, as I'm finding with my 15-year-old, young people do not like to be wrong. They know it all. And so they're not going to come out and say, oh, I love the Republicans. They're going to hold fast. We need to just not assume that the numbers are going to do it for them. We have to be the advocates. We have to point these things out. And numbers do make our eyes glaze over, particularly young people's. So it's bigger than the numbers. The devastating impact of Obama's policies are not just on young people's job prospects. He is devastating the American dream. He is devastating our future. I truly see it as a war on America, a war on what we are as America. And a lot of people say, oh no, you can't say war on America, you can't say that. And there's this thing in Los Angeles, your city council, Los Angeles' city council, last night said they're gonna impose this speech doctrine on radio hosts. And they're going to, did y'all read about this? Okay, Drudge this morning. These 2 radio hosts said something offensive. Can you believe that they're actually trying to get listeners and they say something offensive or shocking? It's what they do on talk radio. And so the city council has come out and said, no, we will not tolerate statements that make people uncomfortable. Okay, now who's going to make that decision? So they're on the verge of prohibiting that sort of speech that they find uncomfortable or distasteful. There's a word, I can't remember what word they use, but that's the essence of it. And they're going to encourage, you know what that means, it's going to turn into force, the owners of the radio stations to hire radio hosts that will balance it out. It's the fairness doctrine that's taking place now at the local level. You're going to see, since they couldn't get it through at the national level, they're going to come up through the grassroots and start implementing it locally. So you all need to have a voice in that. Anyway, my point is I would be off the airways if I said war on America. But you know what? It is really time for us to wake up and realize that our very way of life is on the precipice here. It's not just some, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we had a conservative elected? We must have a conservative elected. Right now, we cannot survive another 4 years. Our freedoms can't survive another 4 years, not just of escalating debt, but what's happening to the very soul and the very essence of what makes us Americans. And this is what our young people who idolize Obama. Remember the Obama, those huge rallies where they were just like automatons. Obama zombies is what Jason Matera calls it. But they were just shouting, Obama. It was really very, very disturbing. But everything that he's doing is still resonating with them. So when he said a few days before the election, we are about to fundamentally transform the United States of America, he meant every word of it. For one thing, he meant that we are to virtually disregard the Constitution. And he's begun this steady assault on the Constitution. When he said about Congress not doing something, well, if they're not going to do it, we'll go around them. What? You can't go around them, but he's going to go around them. The unelected czar, somebody was mentioning them a few minutes ago, that is going around the Constitution. Saying that the Constitution reflects a blind spot in our founding fathers, and it is fundamentally flawed. This is what Obama said. This is what young people are learning. They're learning, who was it in his administration that, it was Ruth Bader Ginsburg recently. Did you hear her when she was giving a speech and she was asked if a country were just forming a new government, what constitution should they use as their example? She never mentioned the United States Constitution. Not the U.S. Not just did she not mention it, she specifically said, I love you all. You're so engaging. I love that. That's wonderful. That is a stunning thing. I've been shocked, and young people are just buying right into this by the class warfare rhetoric we've heard. I really don't remember this sort of classism, this sort of talking about separating our society into these different classes and turning us against each other. I think that it's this imposition of classism is a shocking thing, and it goes against our notion that we are a very mobile society, and that anybody who is not in the top economic factor, they want to become successful and prosperous. We don't assign people to different classes. We are Americans, and we all have great possibility and potential, but Obama does. He does assign them to certain ranks, and obviously he assigns himself to the most elite, and only he knows what is right and what is best for us. You know, this whole fairness thing, this mantra that we've been hearing, everybody needs to do their fair share, and everybody deserves a fair shot. You know that means we need equality of outcomes, that everybody needs to be the same. Remember when, before the election, he was asked about capital gains taxes, and he said, you know what? Even if it's true, he almost acknowledged that it's true, even if it's true that cutting the capital gains tax will improve our economic condition, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't cut it for the purposes of fairness. Is it sickening? It makes your stomach churn, doesn't it? It should. There's something really, really disturbing about that we would limit people's opportunities to succeed for one man's idea of what is fair. To me, it is fair that we have hope, that we have the chance to succeed, to achieve any level of fairness. We just did this movie at Young America's Foundation, and at one point, Steve Moore comes out and he says, fairness, you want equality, you want everybody to have the same thing? Go to Cambodia. Everybody has the same thing, they have nothing. They are poor, they are destitute. That's where you can have fairness and you can have equality. That is not what America is all about. And Obama said, and young people are listening to this, he said, at a certain point, you've made enough money. Who the heck is Barack Obama to tell any of us when we are prosperous enough? And it's just assigning evil to people to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe they want more. Is one Mercedes not enough? These are people who hire other people. The entrepreneurs in our society are the great heroes of America. It's not just accumulating personal wealth, and fine, their accumulation of personal wealth is giving other people jobs. They are buying things that other people are producing, but even more importantly, it is giving people a livelihood. It is hiring them. It is expanding their businesses. It is building new businesses. Who is he to say at some point, I think you've made enough money? And then, of course, everybody remembers, I think it serves everyone when we spread the wealth around a little bit. That is really not America. And it is scary. But young people think it sounds like a really, really good idea. They think the idea that, why should anybody have more than I do? That doesn't seem very fair. Until you put it to them. At the foundation, we did this survey. We sent young people out, and they would take this little clipboard, And they would go to their campuses and they would go to their classmates and say, hey, you like that idea of redistribution that Obama's been talking about? Yeah, I love that. Everybody should be equal. There's no reason. He doesn't deserve anything more than he has. And they say, okay, great, because we're going to start this redistribution plan for GPA. So you've got a 4.0. And he has a 2.0. I know he goes out and parties all the time and you work really hard, but it's not really fair that you have a 4.0 and he has a 2.0. So sign this petition, and we're going to ask the dean to do a GPA redistribution program. He gets a point, you lose a point, everybody's happy. Right? Man, I don't like that. You have to formulate these issues in ways that young people are shocked by. Like, wait a minute, that's fundamentally not right. It's unjust. And why do I have any incentive to want to work and do well if you're going to take it away from me? Okay, yes, that's exactly it. We have to find a way to convey these ideas to young people. Obama is constantly belittling and disparaging our military. And you might think, well, I never hear him really doing that. Okay, the Koran burning, going after our soldiers. And by the way, the assaults on our soldiers, that was started before the Koran burning. And yet he falls over himself, his administration, putting them out there to apologize for our military, whose lives are constantly on the line. The new rules of engagement. I will not go into the details of this, but you need to know about what our military is suffering under these rules of engagement. You talk about military stress, and the left loves to say, oh my gosh, our military, they're under such stress, and they're falling apart, and they're doing crazy things just because we have all these wars. No, because this administration has tied their hands and prevented them from defending themselves from attacks from the enemy by these ridiculous new rules of engagement that say they can't shoot back. They can't fight back. That is essentially the problem, and that's disparaging of our military. But have you ever heard Obama, either Barack or Michelle, they go all over the country talking to these young people every chance they get, saying, oh, you need to go to work for nonprofits. You need to be a community organizer. Fine, I work for a nonprofit. That's great. But have you ever heard him say that the most noble thing you could do with your life is to serve your country in the military? Never. He has never once said that. He just takes the opportunity to put down our men and women who are serving in the greatest cause for this country that there is. But he does not honor that, and he does not lift them up. Obviously, there are the rules for radicals. Young people are seeing this sort of deceit out there. We were going to have the most transparent administration in history. This is by far the opposite. The backroom deals, things happening that we know nothing about. Obama said on the radio, I was talking to Chris and Kathy about a lot of this last night, about how the fundamental transformation that is going to happen in our country, it's not going to happen through the president, and it's not going to happen through the legislature, and it's not going to happen through the courts. It's going to happen administratively. That's what he actually said on this radio show, through regulations. It cracked me up the other day when he said, I've actually reduced regulations in my administration. Seriously, did anybody believe that? I don't think anybody believed that. Have you seen the health care bill and all the regulations that go along with it? I think, though, the most important and the most destructive part of this administration has been the attack on America's position in the world. The notion that this actually is the greatest country on the face of the earth. Obama said when he was asked, do you believe in American exceptionalism? He said, sure, I believe in American exceptionalism, just like I think the Brits believe in British exceptionalism, and the Greeks, he picked the Greeks, interesting, and the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism. He said we are all the same. There's no reason for us to think that we are any greater than any other countries. The bowing before dictators, it's a bizarre, stunning thing that he did. And, young people buy into that. It's even our conservative young people. We had a conference a couple years ago at Grove City College, a very conservative college, and it was actually a high school conference. So kids came from all over the area. They were conservative kids, but they wanted to know more. And we sat around, we had a little bull session, and I was asking them about their opinions on different things. And then I said something about, so you believe America is the greatest country on the face of the earth, right? they all recoiled. These young conservatives, many of whom are homeschooled, but they watch the news, but most of them were in our public high schools. They said, we have no reason to think that we are any better than anybody else. Now, why is that? A lot of it has to do with our president, who, read Dinesh D'Souza's Roots of Obama's Rage. If you haven't read it, Roots of Obama's Rage. It is a fascinating book that will really help you understand what is this guy all about. But basically, he thinks that we're a colonialist power trying to conquer the rest of the world, and America needs to come down a peg or two. Well, young people are actually agreeing with that, and that's because they are being indoctrinated from the time they are little itty-bitty in our public school system, and certainly it is intensified when they get to high school. Often by the time they get to college, they are sort of I'm not going to say a lost cause, but some of them are so far gone that it is really hard to ever reach them. But they are not taught, and now it's called social studies, right? It's not called history. They are not getting an understanding of our founding, of what makes America great, of the fact that America is the greatest experiment ever conducted. The notion that freedom and liberty, personal sovereignty, comes from the Almighty. For one thing, they're taught that they're stupid and shallow if they think there is an Almighty. To be Christian means you are less than the rest of us elitists who really have an understanding of what is right and good. They are taught that only government can provide certain solutions, any solutions really, to our quandary. So gone is the notion of our founders that liberty comes from God, and only we get to decide when government can take some of that away from us. We make the decision when it's okay, not Barack Obama coming in and deciding when the Constitution suits him, but we make that decision. Young people are not hearing about Nathan Hale and the great patriots. Nathan Hale, who was the school teacher who was captured by the British as a spy, and who, when he was hung, he said, "I only regret that I have one life to give for my country." They don't hear about John Paul Jones, the great admiral of our tiny little colonial forces, who was fighting the most powerful fleet in the world, and his ship, I always get ship boat things wrong, but anyway, his ship was being shot to smithereens, and it was literally sinking. As he's holding on to the rafters, the British admiral shouts over to him, "Are you ready to surrender?" And he shouts back with everything in him, "I have not yet begun to fight." And he won. By the hand of God, he won. They certainly don't hear about the fact that the signers of the Declaration of Independence knew that they were signing their death warrants when they went forward and they put their names on that document that guides us still today. They don't get. They think, "Oh, isn't it pretty? They wore those little tri-corner hats and they were having fun." These men faced torture. They faced attacks. One of them, I gotta get his name before I do this again. His two sons were captured, and they were put on one of the floating death ships, and prisoner of war ships where you die. Everybody who went on them died just about. And he was asked to recant his signing of the Declaration. And he said, "I had to say the hardest word of my life, no." He condemned his boys to die because he so believed in the principle of freedom that should still be the guiding light. It still is the guiding light for oppressed peoples around the world. They count on us. They don't know about Elbridge Gerry, who had palsy, one of the signers. His hand shook like this as he walked up to sign the Declaration, and he says, my hand shakes, but my heart does not." He was firm. And they certainly don't hear about Patrick Henry, thundering from the floor of St. John's Church in Richmond, Virginia, when he knew he was committing treason, when he had the audacity to talk about, he said, "Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Those aren't just words. He was talking about is this peace thing that we hear the left falling all over themselves to acquire, or this notion that we're all going to be the same, in bondage essentially to government. Is it worth it? Is it worth the chains that tie us to government? It's not. We have to release ourselves from that fear, that control. Basically, we have to stand up and take responsibility right now for that freedom that is literally on the precipice. You do it personally by talking to your children and your grandchildren about what liberty is, by not assuming that just because you all are good, godly Americans who understand liberty, don't assume they're going to get that. You have to teach them. You have to talk to them about every single issue. You have to present them with both sides. We can help you do that at Young America's Foundation. But you need to watch the news with them, walk them through it. And you do every young person that you have. You need to send them to some conservative group. You need to get them surrounded by conservative people because they need it. They are under attack on their high schools, and certainly when they go to college. They will be scorned and they will be attacked, and we need your young people. Don't protect them from that. They need to have the courage to stand up for that freedom that you and I are standing up for today. And they need to, not only do they need to have the courage, they need to have the ability. They need to have the knowledge, the know-how. At Young America's Foundation, that's what we do. I have the greatest job ever, that I get to get up every morning and think about the greatest modern-day champion of freedom, and that's Ronald Reagan. Because 14 years ago, Young America's has been around for about 40 years, sending great conservatives into the pit of darkness, the college campuses. We send Buckley and Novak and Coulter and Malkin, all of them. We used to send the greats that are now gone, Russell Kirk, and now we send the biggest names out there. It's like throwing an intellectual grenade into the campus where there's this lockdown of thought. Do you know that on so many college campuses there are speech codes? They say it's for purposes of manners. It's not manners. Whatever happened to the free and open exchange of ideas? That notion that you should have all the ideas out there so you learn the best ones. No, the left, they control the campuses. They want a lockdown. They don't want any openness. They don't want diversity. They don't want young people to hear our ideas because our ideas win every single time. So there's a lockdown. So these young people, we send these conservative speakers in. We have conferences at the Reagan Ranch Center and the Reagan Ranch. 14 years ago, Young America's Foundation, when the Reagan Ranch was up for auction, basically, and nobody was stepping forward to save this beautiful, beautiful treasure. It was Reagan's home during his presidency. He spent 360 days of those 8 years at the Reagan Ranch. He loved it more than any other place. Young America's Foundation stepped forward to save the ranch, not just because we're nostalgic and we love Reagan, although we do and we are, but it is to preserve this beautiful place as a living testimony to the ideas of this great freedom champion. Everything is exactly as he left it, down to the tube of toothpaste, down to the Liberty Bell shower head. It's all there. Down to his bedroom, where the leader of the most powerful man in the world, the two twin beds were pushed together and held together by little plastic ties you get at the hardware store. With a footstool pushed up to the end of his side because his feet hung over the end. That was fine for him. He went there and he worked whenever he had the chance from sun up to sundown. We want young people to see this little 1,600 square foot adobe home that made this man happy. That made this man remember why he is here. That he looked out on those 680 acres of God's grace, and he remembered how precious and dear freedom is. We need you all to help us teach young people that by sending them to the ranch, by sending them to our conferences, either in D.C. or around the country. We're getting ready to, this weekend, we're launching 4 freedom conferences. And I'll tell you the states, and you can guess why we maybe picked them. North Carolina, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Florida. So we are taking the battle right to the battleground. And we are exposing young people to conservative ideas because they need to hear them proactively. Because I tell you, the left is out there and they are championing their ideas effectively. We need to be more effective, more bold, and certainly more courageous than they are. And I'm just going to leave you with a quote from Ronald Reagan. I can't think of anybody better to leave you with a quote to encourage you to stand up, even you young moms. God bless you for being here. I know it's hard. I left my 4 babies at home to come here to you. We can't stand back and let others fight this fight for us. We have to do it. As Reagan said, freedom is never more than 1 generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for. It must be protected and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. Let's make sure that we pass that freedom on, not just preserved, but expanded to our children. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
For more information on the Young Americans Foundation, go to www.yaf.org. And if you'd like to join us at one of our luncheons, go to the Newport Harbor Republican Women's website, www.nhrw.org.